Welcome to the SCR Connections January webinar. It's our first webinar of 2018, and we're so excited that everyone could be here with us. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today's session, Eugenia Bay. She is the Electronic Resources Librarian at the MIT Libraries. She lives in Boston now, but has Texas roots, having received her MSIS from the University of Texas at Austin and previously worked at the Texas A&M University Libraries prior to coming to MIT. She's the current Marketing and Social Media Coordinator for NASIG and a past president of the Asian Pacific American Librarians Association, which is one of the 5 ethnic caucuses of the American Library Association. MIT and Boston are great, but she does miss good Tex-Mex and Texas winters. I feel you there, Eugenia. How are you this morning up in Boston?
Hi, everyone.
We can hear you, Eugenia.
Okay. Okay. Great. Sorry, it wasn't turning. The little microphone wasn't changing colors. Hello and Happy New Year. Thank you to everyone for joining me on this webinar, especially as I understand this is a slightly different time for everyone from your usual webinar times. My next slide can give you an idea of what Boston looks like right now. That's MIT, and this is a pretty accurate representation of what our campus looks like after the Bobogenesis from last week, which I was very happy to miss. So, yeah, it's been interesting to come back after being in Texas for the holidays. I guess I'll start off with a little bit about telling you about MIT and also about our technical services department. We're a private ACRL library with over 5 million print and electronic resources, approximately 162 staff, and an FTE of over 11,000. So as I like to say, this is my smaller library after having come from UT and A&M. This is our technical services department. At the moment, we're called Acquisitions and Discovery Enhancement, and we are part of the Collections Directorate. We are made up of 3 format-specific teams. The e-resources team, which I'm a part of, which handles acquisitions, cataloging, and metadata support for all of the library's licensed e-resources. Team Tangible, which handles all forms of print and tangible resources throughout their life cycles, and the Digital Collections and Reformatting team, which handles all MIT-produced materials, including born digital content, theses, open access articles, and print collections that have been identified as candidates for digitalization. This is our current incarnation for the moment. We will be undergoing some pretty major changes, as I just found out yesterday. So this is going to be don't keep this org chart too much in your minds as we go along. Later on this year, we're going to be moving to an off-campus location about a half-mile away from campus. It's something that I think a lot of technical services departments are experiencing at the moment. And it's going to be quite a big change for a lot of us, especially some of my colleagues who have been here for 10 or more years. But I think it'll be a very exciting change for us, especially as we'll be getting a much nicer facility than what we're currently in right now. And finally, we're looking at potentially merging with one of our technology department teams, which happens to be our technical systems and support services team. They're going to be joining us along the rest of the technology directorate in the new space, so we'll be co-located. And the thinking is that since we work so closely together already and we're in different spaces, this will give the opportunity for us to have even greater synergies as we work together. So why did I go through all of that? These are all changes that are going on at academic libraries and technical services departments all across the nation. Probably some of you have gone through some of this or know of someone who has gone through something similar. And all of these changes are part of an effort in recent years to reorganize and transform technical services as academic libraries themselves respond to pressures in higher education. Okay. So what are some of these changes and pressures that are causing academic libraries and technical service departments to change like this? We're living now in what some, including Daniel Pink, define as the conceptual age. We're transitioning from what was the information age in the 20th century, where the internet had just gotten started, and we were starting to make information widely available. And now we're moving to an age where that's become the norm, and we're trying to figure out what do we do with all of this abundance of information. The information age was characterized by left brain analytical thinking, technical skills, knowledge, and expertise. And in contrast, the conceptual age is characterized by right brain thinking and soft skills such as empathy, creativity, and the ability to detect patterns and make connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. And we can see this effect in academic libraries as libraries are also transitioning from the information age to the conceptual age. Instead of, in the 20th century, academic libraries were very focused on building massive collections and collecting as much outside materials as possible. Now in the 21st century, in response to reduced budgets, reduced space, we've shifted our focus to becoming more user-centric and using library spaces to support learning, teaching, and research, which is what is going to happen actually to the technical services space and also the technology directorate space at MIT, where our spaces will be used to support student learning or becoming spaces for them. Our collection development practices are also no longer solely focused on acquiring outside content, but now we're focusing more on making local collections and unique content accessible and available. And because information is so abundant and easy to find right now, users no longer need our help finding information, but they do need our help to make sense of it, which is leading to a shift to content creation or maker culture. And you can see this reflected in ACRL Top Trends in Academic Libraries, which they released in 2016. They do this every other year, so the next one will be out sometime later on this year. But as you can see, some of the trends that they identified involve things like making research data available, which has become a great priority with federal funding agencies mandating that researchers make their data and their processes publicly available. Digital scholarship has really grown, and the framework for information literacy in higher education is something that's being discussed widely across libraries at the moment. And we'll revisit these trends a little bit later, but I just wanted to sort of give you an idea of where academic libraries are going in this new conceptual age that we've entered. So when we look at some of our technical services operations today, they seem to be more characteristic of the information age, which was very process-driven and focused on procedures, policies, routine tasks. Since we have very limited interaction with external users, and since we work primarily with licensed resources, and we've automated and outsourced a lot of routine tasks, it can be more difficult to connect our work to student learning or to these sort of more unique collections that libraries are now trying to surface and promote more widely. And because we're so production-oriented and focused on efficiency and policy procedures, it can be difficult for us to see ourselves in some of our institutions' new strategic priorities and missions. This is true at MIT, where right now we're shifting our focus from collecting outside, what is called outside-in collections, or those that we buy from external sources to make available locally, and which appear in many other universities' collections, to what's called inside-out collections, or those that are generated from the university and are often unique to that university. And what you see here right now is the Lorcan Dempsey's collections grid, which has kind of become our, I guess you could call it our North Star for the Collections Directorate's mission and vision for right now. This is a concept that Dempsey popularized. As you can see, the bottom half of the grid refers to those inside-out collections that university libraries want to focus on more, and that includes things from our archives and special collections that are unique to the institution, and also things such as preprints and research data and other sort of research and learning materials that also will not be widely found in other universities. But if you look at where technical services falls in, you can see that we're more on the outside-in collection side, which was that top half up here on the collections grid, and that refers to all of the books, journals, and databases and other materials that we get from external vendors, as well as freely available web sources, all of which are found in many collections across many institutions. So what we're trying to do right now is figure out how to get from having an outside-in perspective and workflows and procedures to figuring out how we can support our library's inside-out collections, our unique resources, and make those accessible to both local and external audiences. And I'll be frank, we're still figuring that out. This is very much a work in progress. But just looking at the ACRL Top Trends, our Future of Libraries Task Force report, and also a report that our Collections Directorate did on diversity, inclusion, and social justice, I've identified a couple of areas where technical services staff can or already are supporting inside-out collections. And some of these, you might remember, are taken from the ACRL Top Trends, such as research data services, digital scholarship, and the open content platform is something that we're hoping to develop as our next ILS. So these are the things I'll be going through and talking about how we in technical services can support them in support of inside-out collections. Okay. So managing research data, this is an area which I think offers some of the greatest opportunities for technical services staff to really advance and build upon the skills that we already have. Due to mandates from federal funding agencies to make research data open and available, many four-year libraries are either planning to or are already offering research management services. And as you can probably imagine, at an institute like MIT, this is a major priority. So in 2012, ACRL identified the following areas that technical services may become involved in to support research data management, and that includes providing technical support for RDS systems such as a repository, depositing or deselecting data sets from repositories, creating or transforming metadata, and identifying data and data sets for potential deposit into a repository. And all of these things, all of these areas are already things that we do in technical services. So it's not too much of a stretch for us to apply this to managing research data as opposed to, say, e-journals or e-books or databases. Many libraries are instead of hiring new staff to do these things, are shifting existing staff into data positions. And this is actually something that I'm experiencing as well. Just this past year, I've moved into supporting our data repository, which is called Dataverse. It's a joint repository that we manage with Harvard. And I've been learning how to extract data, ingest it into Dataverse, create metadata for it, and then make it publicly accessible. And this is probably something that many more libraries will be doing as they continue to offer research data management services, and it's an area I think that will be of great growth for technical services staff as we move forward. And digital publishing, at least the way we do it here at MIT, is an area that probably offers the closest one-to-one relationship to inside-out collections. And probably out of all of our technical services team, the digital collections and reformatting team, they probably have the best handle on it right now. So in a study conducted in 2012, Ben Hunter identified the following services that you see here as ones that technical services staff can perform to support digital resources management. And as with research data management services, there are already areas that we have a great deal of expertise in: metadata and cataloging, providing technical support for online platforms, working with partners outside of the library, and so on and so forth. This is going to be a significant area for MIT, as one of our Future of Libraries task force reports recommendations is to digitize as much of our analog resources as possible, and to invest in a large-scale digitization project to make our hidden collections available. And this is all part of our effort to really surface our inside-out collections, which provide a wealth of information and knowledge for the academic world, but right now they're inaccessible to everyone because they are simply sitting somewhere in our archives or in a box somewhere. So this is going to be a long-term project that we'll be embarking on, and hopefully something that we in technical services will be taking a leading role in. So we've also begun providing more support for open access publishing models, which right now is being handled by the acquisitions department, which I'm also a part of. We all know that the scholarly communications marketplace is not ideal, should we say. There are inflated price increases, there are many terms and conditions that simply don't work for academic libraries, and due to mergers and consolidations, there's really only a handful of publishers available that we can get resources from, which leads them to basically having a monopoly on the marketplace. So as a way for us to try to transform the scholarly communications landscape towards something more equitable and open, we've begun funding open access publishing models such as Knowledge Unlatched, HowlNet, and Reveal Digital, which these at least are focused on making monographs and e-journals and also newspapers in the humanities publicly available, as a lot of times humanities resources are not as easy to make open access as, say, science materials. For most of them, we commit to about 5 years with $1,000 being deposited each year. And our workflow for this is the same as it would be for any other resource that we would acquire from a commercial publisher. So we place an order through acquisitions, we pay for it using our collections budget, we catalog the titles once they become available, And this is just a way for us to vote with our collection dollars for materials that we feel advance our mission to make scholarship as openly available as possible. Probably like many of you, we usually don't catalog open access publications, but since we've begun supporting these models, we've had to rethink that. Obviously for the ones that we're supporting, we will want to catalog all of the titles, but this is also causing us to rethink our policy in general around open access publications. And this is something that is still evolving as we do more of this kind of work. And let's see. One of the ACRL trends that was mentioned is the consolidation of many content platform providers. For example, you can think of ProQuest acquiring Ex Libris, and earlier than that, they also acquired Hero Solutions, and that took basically two major next generation ILSs and put them under the control of one very major publisher. Like many people, we're going to have to change our ILS system very soon. We use Aleph, which is a much older product from Ex Libris, and so far we haven't been very happy with what's available from the commercial vendors, which is what is making us think about creating our own ILS, which we're calling an open content platform. This is also a recommendation that came from our Future of Libraries Task Force report. This would, in theory, replace our current ILS, our current discovery system, our current electronic resources management system, and other legacy technology systems. And this is still very much at the conceptual stage. It's probably the closest thing that is available right now that's from a commercial publisher. It would be something like Folio. It will also be apps that will be utilized, that will be built on top of the platform. And Folio is also something that we're keeping an eye on. We actually have someone who's involved in one of the resource management interest groups, and we'll be keeping an eye on Folio when it comes out later on this year. And as we work, at the same time, we'll be working on our own platform. And many of us in technical services are really looking forward to this, as we can definitely see this as being an area where we can make a lot of contributions, especially regarding metadata and just bring the library perspective into the design process, so that our needs and our values aren't lost as we build this. Okay. And finally, I wanted to mention the importance of diversity and inclusion and social justice, which I realize might not seem like a very intuitive or fit for technical services work. Diversity, inclusion, and social justice, or DISJ as we call it for short at MIT, is definitely something that is great importance to us, not just at the libraries, but also across the Institute. And this is also something that we're seeing more and more across the libraries profession in general. OLEX and NASIG, both of which are technical services organizations, released diversity statements. Last year, OLEX released theirs at ALA, and NASIG released theirs a little bit earlier. SSP, which is the Society for Scholarly Publishing, also is working on a statement of principles that includes commitment to diversity. This isn't yet available publicly, but it's something that NASIG is working on, as we're part of this cross-organizational diversity initiative working group. So these principles are definitely getting noticed by everywhere in libraries, and this is the first year that I've seen conference programming on diversity and inclusion at places like the Acquisition Institute, at ERNL, and at Alex, the Midwinter Pre-Conference will be on accessibility. And so this is very exciting to see, as it's something that we're struggling with figuring out how to apply some of these principles to our day-to-day work. It can be more difficult to make that connection when we're dealing with systems and procedures and policies that seem pretty straightforward. But I would argue that it's far from being unrelated or outside of what we think of being our official responsibilities. These principles are definitely very much a part of our work. And I just want to give a quick shout out to two of my colleagues who are going to be publishing a forthcoming book chapter on diversity, inclusion, and social justice in technical services in a forthcoming title from Purdue University Press. So please keep an eye out for that. They're going to be interviewing some of us around our department and getting our perspectives on how we see we can fit into this type of work. And hopefully you'll be hearing more about this at conferences and also across and maybe even at a webinar similar to this, if there's interest. So after saying all of that, how can technical services adapt and evolve to meet the demands of this new conceptual age? And here's where I get to the part that I'm calling the easier said than done section. Because we're all still very much trying to figure out our way in this sort of new area, and there aren't a lot of concrete answers out there. There are some suggestions for directions and where to go, but basically, I would say right now there are more questions than answers. So you have to just bear with me as we go through these next couple of skills. So our traditional skills such as problem solving and critical thinking and subject expertise are still needed, but we also have to have a positive attitude towards change. We have to be flexible, and we have to adapt quickly. And this is something that we've been doing for a long time in technical services. As we transition from print to electronic resources, as we update our systems. This is just another sort of transition that we'll be working through. But one major change that many have said that we need to make is to shift away from a production-oriented transactional environment. That's very much sort of the we get the selector requests the book, we order it, we catalog it, or somebody has a problem in that they can't access a journal article, we work with the publisher to resolve it, and it's basically a one-shot. It's very focused on short-term needs and short-term success, and it's something that when it becomes routine can quickly decrease in importance. And unfortunately, as we know that once the administration sees something as not being important, then that's when our department gets less funding, less support, less staff, and many of us are already stretched thin as it is. So we want to shift to a more transformational environment that focuses on long-term solutions where we can recognize patterns, anticipate needs, and then translate these solutions in a way that can be understood by faculty, students, and staff. And in that way, we can also demonstrate our impact on learning and teaching and research we have a lot of expertise in the tools that we use, and we can act as a bridge for both internal and external users. So our own colleagues, say in public services, and also with the users who contact us for troubleshooting questions, we can help them understand how these tools work and also how to use them effectively. To go along with the some of the skills required by the new conceptual age, we want to cultivate more soft skills such as interpersonal relationships, communication, teamwork, customer services, the kinds of high concept and high touch skills that are needed in the conceptual age, while not losing touch with the technical ones as well. We also want to go beyond something like cross-training, which a lot of us are doing right now, since we are so short-staffed right now. We want to really establish a growth mindset and a learning environment, and encourage people to ask why they're doing things a certain way, and if that way is still relevant. When you cross-train, we're still following the same procedures, even though it may be different people doing it. So the print, say we cross-train the print people to do electronic resources, they'll still be doing the same things that we're doing. But what we really want to do is to get people to think more about why they're doing this and how they're doing this, and whether or not that's something that can be done differently. And finally, this is probably, I think, the hardest for all of us. We want to allow people permission to fail. This is very counterintuitive. We don't like to make mistakes. We're very detail-oriented and very precise, but people need space to experiment, and it doesn't mean that if it fails, then we should still do it. We'll have to continually analyze and modify any steps as needed. Have to build in the ability to make adjustments along the way, and we don't want to let policies and procedures dictate to the point of inflexibility. I realize I probably raised a lot more questions than given answers. This is going to be a more difficult transition for a lot of us as we try to adapt to these new priorities and the new vision that our institutions are setting forth. It's something that we faced it's different than what we faced in the past, but I believe with the skills that we have and with our ability to adapt to change and to be at the forefront of many of these sorts of innovations, improvements, that we will get through this time, and we will become leaders in the conceptual age as we were in the information age. So I will leave it at that, and I will open up the floor for any questions.
Thank you so much, Eugenia, for that presentation. We'll go ahead and open it up to questions. Anyone who has a question, go ahead and type that into the chat box. I realize it will take people a little bit of time to start typing those questions in, Eugenia. So I actually really enjoyed hearing about the conceptual age and that whole idea of really having to rethink libraries from the ground level, what it is that people are needing from us. So I really enjoyed that part in particular. It looks like we do have a question in the chat box. Do some staff still work with ordering commercially available materials like e-journals and making them accessible? I assume she means at your library there, Eugenia.
Yeah, yes, we do. And we're still going to be doing that for, we'll still be doing this for the conceivable future. I don't think that's something that we're going to let go of. Even though we have these new priorities and this new sort of direction, doesn't mean that we're going to let go of some of our some of our traditional workflows and responsibilities. So there still will be people who will be working on collecting outside-in collections.
Great, thank you, Eugenia. Well, it looks like someone is wanting an additional source. I know the last slide of your PowerPoint is your sources. I don't know if you want to flip to that last slide.
Oh, thing.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. Let's see. I will, can I send you, Sarah, the citation, and then if you could send it out with the slides?
Yeah, sure. And Lynn, if you want to email us at our email address, we can send that directly to you if you want to email our office email. Yeah, I know. There's several librarians that here, especially in the Houston area, will be literally building from the ground up, especially with the
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. Was that from Harvey?
Yeah, the after effects of Harvey.
Yeah.
Well, I guess while we're waiting for any other attendee questions, another question I can ask you, Eugenia. What do you think is the best next step for people in technical services? How can they start adapting to this change?
Yeah, that's one thing that we've been trying to do more of here in our department is to do more reading and to do more more discussions around some of the things that our leaders are reading. So one book that our AD has suggested, and I still need to actually get a copy of this for myself, is called Machine Platform and Learning. It's by an MIT professor, and this apparently is where he wants technical services to go. And I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet exactly what that's going to entail, but I would suggest probably reading not just literature that's library literature, but also literature that's outside of our field, so in like technology and business, science for sure, and to try to one thing that our leaders are trying to get us to think more about is to look to outside fields to inform our work and to see what we can take back from people who are doing things that we want to do, but just maybe not in libraries.
Great, and someone was asking if you could share the title of that book, if you have it off the top of your head.
Oh, yeah, sure thing. It's called, let me just Google it to make sure I have it correctly. Oh, sorry, it was Machine, Platform, and Crowd.
All right, I'm going to add that to my list of to read things as well. Thank you. It looks like we did have another question come in. Do you have buy-in from your administration and departments to attach metadata to deposited studies?
Yeah, yes, we do, definitely. Do you mean the, actually, sorry, let me just go back. Do you mean from the library administration or from MIT's institutional administration departments?
That's a good question. We'll see if that person who asked that question can add their...
Oh, MIT's administration. Yeah, I mean, yes, at the top, it's something that they generally don't get as involved in that level. But the departments, it might vary a little bit more. I haven't heard of any cases where anyone has turned us down or anyone has objected to any of the metadata that we've come up with, but that's certainly something that could come up. In general, they've been very supportive of what we've been doing. They work very closely with the librarians who are doing this, and they respect our expertise. But that is something, as we all know, faculty members are always a little bit, they can be a little bit prickly. So that hasn't come up yet, though, but that is a very good question.
All right, it looks like we don't have any other questions right at the moment.
Sorry, one just came in.
Oh, perfect. Good timing. All right. Are you converting existing positions to support these new functions or adding new positions or a combination of both?
So it's a combination of both. We are going to be adding an additional position, although this is actually to replace somebody who just retired. It was our former monographs acquisitions librarian, and what we are going to be retooling it for when we post it out later on this year. So if anyone others wants to come and work at MIT, just keep an eye out for that. But we are also adding new positions, not necessarily in technical services, but in, or not necessarily in e-resources and the tangible team, but in our digital formatting team, we have added some others, and we'll all be, I think, adjusting our sort of our work responsibilities as we get further along into implementing the future libraries task force recommendations.
All right, thank you. It looks like we do have another question. Like many other libraries, we're undergoing budget cuts to our collections. That's a familiar story. Have you found new or more effective ways to demonstrate the value of your collections, especially e-resources, to administrators, and has this become a department or unit priority?
Yeah, so that's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward, because a lot of the e-resources that we currently work with are those sort of outside-in collections, which we know that our administration wants us to focus less on. It won't be, or at least right now, it won't be because of any sort of budgetary cuts. It's more of a philosophical change rather than a financial one. But it, yeah, I think that's part of the sort of the tension that we're feeling here. While we do want to support our library's mission to, surface our unique content as much as possible, on the other hand, we do have all of these sort of external publications that need support and that our faculty still want us to get. So working that out, if there's a budget cut, I can't say what's gonna happen. I'm sure we'll probably have to have some cancellation projects, but going forward, I think it's going to be a little bit of a back and forth as to where we're going to spend our collection dollars.
All right.
And yes, that is a great question.
Yeah. And I have had another one come in. How do you determine which open access items to add to your online catalog?
That's a good question. So in the past, we haven't added a lot of open access items unless they're specifically requested by, say, a selector or a user. Right now, the ones that we have, we have deliberately added, have been the ones from the collections that we've supported, like Knowledge Unlatched, which is a collection of ebooks and journals that we fund to keep open access. Those are definitely ones that we want our users to be able to find. But there is a push from our scholarly communications department to try to get us to add not just content that we already are financially supporting in some way or that's requested by a user or selector, but to maybe add some of the things like DOAJ or DOAB, even though they're already, we make them discoverable through SFX in our discovery layer, but that's something that we may need to think about adding to our catalog as well to make them more widely available. And that it is sort of our cataloging staff have a lot of different opinions on that. We're pretty stretched thin right now. We're down to only 3.5 catalogers, I guess, including myself. And I know we're under a lot of pressure to get at least the paid content out as quickly as possible. So adding on any further sort of any further content that's already widely available, it's going to take some negotiating, I think.
All right, it looks like that's just about all the questions for now. If you do have additional questions, you can feel free to email. I know Eugenia had her email on the previous slide, and you can also email us, and we'll be happy to pass it on to her. So, Eugenia, I'm going to thank you so much for a wonderful presentation and some great question and answers there. I think that was wonderful.
Those are really great questions. Thank you all.
So I'll ask everyone to stick around for just a few moments. We have some final housekeeping things to take care of. So I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll deal with those final housekeeping items.